Yo, what is going on, everyone? I'm back with another review video. It is going to be on my PureTrak P-51 mousepad. Thank you so much to PureTrak for sending this out for review. And let's just get right into the meat and potatoes of the review. So right off the bat, I do want to talk about the overall quality like I normally do, and then I will get into the surface, how it performs in game, and then comparisons a little bit later as well. So first off, the stitch edging is absolutely perfect. It is below the surface. There are no nicks anywhere on my pad, and I have been using this pretty religiously since getting it. I did do a couple streams with the Super Beings Memoria pad, but the only reason is because I felt like I was done testing with this pad in particular, so I moved on to another pad, but I do want to get as in-depth as I can with this pad as humanly possible. So other than the perfect stitched edging, the base is something that is very talked about right now. The base, they are using Alpha Cell, much like the Pulse Air ES1 and ES2 pads. And the biggest differences between the P-51 base and the Pulsar ES series bases is the Pulsar pads are using a previous version of Alpha Cell, while PureTrak are using the newer versions. So even just looking at the bottom of the base, you can tell that it is very different from the ES series pads. And really the biggest difference is this pad is not as sticky as the ES series pads. Those pads, like when I pull it off, it's a lot more stuck to my desk, and then it also has like this weird electric current when I pull it off the pad. The old Pulsar pads, when I would pull it off and if it would touch my monitor would shut off. Like my monitor just shut off. I think 3 times that I did it because I was like, there's no way that this is a real thing. I can't believe that a pad would do that to my monitor. So I got really scared using it a lot later. However, you don't have to worry about that with the P-51. It doesn't have that same effect where if you pull it off, it won't shut off your monitor. The only thing is it's not as sticky. However, I did hear with the Pulsar pads that the base would wear off over time, the level of stickiness. So maybe this is kind of what it would boil down to, because this base is exactly the same from day one. So I'm very happy with that. I really do like that the fact that for a $40 pad, nothing quality-wise has degraded whatsoever, which is absolutely perfect. So other than the base and the stitching, it comes completely flat packaged, which is amazing. Again, $40 pad, flat shipping. The really only competitor to this pad is the ES2 from Pulsar, and I like this pad much, much more. The biggest reason is the surface alone. The surface is very controlled, however, the dynamic friction is really effortless, and the initial friction is very smooth too. And in a lot of my pads, the main thing I look for is micro adjustments. So things like this, like fast motions like this, if I feel any tugging, that typically knocks off a couple points from me personally, which I don't have with this pad, even though the stopping power is fantastic on this pad. Even using other mouse feet, much like the GPX, it does feel a lot heavier, but that's just because it's a heavier mouse. However, the glide, stopping power, and everything is absolutely perfect. So one thing that I absolutely love when it comes to mouse pads is when they aren't mouse feet dependent. You could use pretty much whatever feet you want on this. I always highly recommend against glass because it typically will degrade your pad over time. I don't use glass skates ever because I feel like I just get much better control with normal PTFE skates. Same thing with pads. I typically like cloth traditional pads over glass pads usually. I just feel like a different level of control with my aim and stability overall. And the main comparisons I do want to make is going to be to the ES2 from Pulsar and the Lethal Gaming Gear Saturn Pro, which I feel like is the only true competitors to this pad because they're all kind of similar, just description-wise. It's going to be smooth, nice cloth surface, while it's going to be a control pad as well with very high quality overall. So I think this pad is way better than the ES2 just because it's not as slow, so I can use this for multiple games. I could use this for Valorant, I can use it for Apex, Overwatch, track heavy or precision-based games. This pad works perfectly for both. Unlike the ES2, in my opinion, it was pretty difficult over time for me to get really adjusted, especially for Overwatch, where you're constantly micro-tracking like this. It's very, very irritating when I just feel a tug after stopping my mouse and having to go like this. Now, I do think that one of the biggest differences between the P-51 and the Lethal Gaming Gear Saturn Pro is definitely going to be the just overall speed. The Saturn Pro feels very traditional cloth pad where it's going to be a really nice smooth dynamic friction, slightly heavier initial friction than the P-51, but way more stopping power. So in my opinion, I would use the Saturn Pro over the P-51 in terms of like if I wanted like a main Valorant or main CS pad, but that's not what I only play. I play track heavy and precision based games. So I do want pads that definitely go like a nice in between where I can cycle between just one pad on multiple games. That's like super important to me. So I prefer the P-51 just ever so slightly over my Saturn Pro just because I like being able to use it for multiple games. Although the things that the Saturn Pro does way better is obviously going to be the softness. The Saturn Pro is X soft, and then the size is much better. I will always stand for that 500 by 500 size, and that pad comes flat, which is super fucking expensive. I'm sure that's super expensive for lethal, but I absolutely like massively respect them for even doing that for us. However, that doesn't take away from the P-51. It being a traditional artisan size, artisan-like quality where there's no nicks anywhere in the stitching and it's below the surface and soft, you will not feel it at all when making huge arm movements, which is amazing. The only thing is the base. I'm kind of iffy on the base. It doesn't move, obviously. Like, the base isn't going to move. Holy shit, I just caused a fucking 4.0 earthquake on my desk. But it's not going to move. The only thing is I do like the pulsar base just a little bit better. Only because I love hearing that orgasmic like noise when I pull it off my desk, which this one is slightly, but just not as loud. But basically, I like this pad much, much more than the ES2. I still like the Saturn Pro a little bit over this pad, but out of all three, I think the most versatile and best bang for your buck is going to be the P-51. Easily in my top three for control pads in general. But yeah, that's pretty much all for my review. I'm going to be having probably a little bit more, probably a little bit less. I'm not too sure. Just getting back into the swing of things for like the 80th time. And then I'm also still recovering from my sickness. I'm not too sure if you can hear how nasally I feel. But yeah, I hope you all have a great rest of your week. And I'll see you in the next video. Peace.
Close. Dead.